What's up, Womack Nostalgia? Dave here with a review of The Seed of the Sacred Fig, the new political thriller drama film from Iranian filmmaker Mohammad Rasoulof. This film has had a very interesting and harrowing journey to the screen, and it's currently on the Oscar shortlist for Best International Feature Film. We'll find out if it gets nominated in about a week's time. I expect it will make that final top five. Interesting thing about that, though, is this film is the German entry for Best International Feature Film, despite the fact that this movie was made by an Iranian telling an Iranian story with Iranian actors and was filmed in Iran. So why is it a German film? The reason being, of course, is that Rusulov is an outspoken critic of the Iranian regime and was actually charged with crimes and had to flee the country quickly. The film was actually smuggled out of the country in unfinished state and then completed in Germany. In fact, the film was actually shot in secret. It was not a short shoot either. I think it was over a month, but it was like stops and starts to secretly make this movie happen. Obviously, that's a very uncommon thing that we see in international film, just the arts in general, but pretty wild times. But I think it makes sense that this might have happened to Rusulov, being critical of an autocratic regime and actually doing it in your work, such as in this movie. That's what happened to him, and it's quite the shame. Thankfully, he was able to escape, and this movie also was able to see the light of day, because I do think it's quite successful. The Seed of the Sacred Fig is a very harrowing film about the destruction of a middle class Iranian family from within. The film is set against the backdrop of the Masa Amini protests in 2022 and 2023, and the very violent suppression of those protests by the Iranian regime is actually shown in this film with archival footage, primarily social media videos, phone videos, and you see those videos in their full violent form interspersed throughout this movie as we go through this fictional story. And it is really challenging material, to say the least. I think what the movie says about theocracy and autocracy in general and living within that kind of regime and what that does to people across generations as moods and mindsets change and evolve over time. I think that's probably the most successful aspect of the movie. And you have to give it to Mohammad Rasoulof for even wanting to make this movie, which is so blatantly critical of how the Iranian government treats its own citizens. The fact that he secretly filmed this in his own country and was able to escape before it was too late is really commendable. Now, if I have a criticism of The Seed of the Sacred Fig, I think for me, like, the movie's quite long. It's nearly 3 hours, and I think most of the movie, the first two acts, I think is really tight, really well done, as it's almost like a cat and mouse style tension, like build up, where we have this family. The father, Iman, he is a newly promoted judge, within the regime, within the system, and his loyal wife is very supportive of him, and they unsurprisingly have very conservative beliefs about society and in general. And then they have their two daughters, one who's 21 and one who's still a teenager, and they obviously have slightly different views about wearing a hijab and gender roles, and in general the lack of freedom they experience as Iranians. That natural conflict, once the daughters begin to openly question what they've been told by their parents and disagree with them about how they feel about things, especially once these protests kick off after this young woman is killed in police custody. That all that stuff really works. And then the escalation happens when Iman's gun that he has to protect himself, a judge who needs a gun to protect himself, again speaks to the fraught nature of what's going on there. Once his gun goes missing within the house, all hell breaks loose in a certain sense, as no one knows who they can trust. And us as the audience, we don't really know where it's going to go. The movie does fall apart a little bit for me once they leave their home, once they leave Tehran and they go like out to the country to their dad's, birthplace. It's very rural, countryside, little town basically. And then things increasingly escalate, and I think it starts to kind of strain belief a little bit, whereas I thought it was really sophisticated in the beginning. And I didn't love the way it ended. I know that's not everyone feels that way. A lot of people really love the way it ends and actually feel like the tension really builds to a satisfying way in that final act. But for me, like I think a lot of the win came out of the sails at the end there. But regardless, I think what the movie says about trust and belief and self doubt and all those things really works, and that's independent of everything it says about Iranian current events, which I think obviously is probably the most powerful stuff. I mean, there's a scene in the beginning of the movie regarding the older daughter Rezvan's friend Sadaf, who is a student. She gets caught up in the protests and specifically caught up in the police response to those protests, and whether the family should take care of her, whether they should keep her away because she will be questioned by the police, things like that. I think all that material is really good about your humanity versus protecting your own type thing. What does being a decent person mean? There's specifically a scene where some medical care is being administered, not to spoil it, which I think is really powerful for its frankness, for its openness, and also for the evolution it presents to one of the characters who to that point is being presented in a different light. So certainly a movie I recommend, certainly a movie that make you think a lot. And again, the volume of the archival real life footage from those protests, less than 2 years ago, all that stuff really works. So I expect this movie to be nominated for Best International Feature Film. Again, to me it's like kind of strange that it ends up being a German submission and like how that works. Like, shouldn't Iran still get credit for this, even though again, like the Iranian Film Board, which I assume is in cahoots with the Iranian regime, do you want to work nominate that? The movie was finished in Germany, but Ruslov's telling a story about his home. They speak Farsi in the movie, they don't speak German. I don't know. It's a bit muddy there. Point is, it'll be recognized. It's very unlikely this movie is going to win. Of course, we expect Emilia Perez to be the favorite in that category, given that's a movie that's likely to be nominated for Best Picture as well, get a lot of nominations. So, that being said, I think it's certainly a movie worth seeing with a powerful message. Let me know, though, what did you think of The Seed of the Sacred Fig? What did you like most about the movie? And for more movie reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.